Actually, I should really stop that music, shouldn't I? I know what it is.
Hello!
You get two hellos. I've tricked people. Usually the Twitch session's Wednesday, but due to unforeseen and unavoidable circumstances, I shoved it to Thursday. And as a result, I'm performing a Twitch in the middle of a ghost town, most likely. So, I'm going to do this for the benefit of everyone listening to it after the broadcast, when you get it on our YouTube channel, where you can watch this video. To learn about, what are we going to learn about? Well, we're going to learn about dynamic music. That is, be able to change the music within the game and not using the sound commands. Because it's been requested, so that's what I'm going to talk about. I don't have a moderator today. I usually have one of the other members of the team sitting in to answer any questions. But this is the very start of 2016 and everyone's buggered off. So it's just me talking endlessly about the subjects that I like to talk about. So, in this particular case, it's Game Guru. So, previous versions, there was a slight issue with the dynamic music system, so it didn't actually work, so no one could actually use it. And so, I'm guessing at this point, no one's using this feature at all, even though it's been in Game Guru for some time. So, I'm going to demonstrate the beauty of dynamic music. Now, what I mean by dynamic music, quite simply, you're playing a game and you listen to some background music, and then you enter a door or a cave collapses or an enemy comes round a corner and the music changes to something upbeat and dynamic, sort of gets the adrenaline going, that kind of thing. Now you could do it using sounds, looping wave files, but you're kind of limited in the sense that, well, for a couple of reasons. One, an entity can only really hold 2 sound files, so that kind of limits you. If you wanted to have different music for different scenarios, you're going to run out. You could do tricks where you have different entities holding different pairs of sound files, but that's very hacky and messy. And also the transitions between the different music, you have different requirements. Sometimes you want to fade out slowly, sometimes you want the music to hit instantly, sometimes you want to cue another piece of music so it tags perfectly with the last piece of music. So you might have a beat going, and then you want to introduce in a couple of extra instruments, but keep that beat perfectly synced. In order to do that, you would actually cue the second track at the end of the first one, so it moves seamlessly into the second one. And you couldn't really do that with the sound commands, where the most sophisticated commands are play, loop, and change the volume and stop it. So that's what the dynamic music system is, and I'm going to show you, probably for the first time, how it's used. So without further ado, this is Game Guru, and I'll just draw something really quick, which would be, say, a start position, and then you maybe walk along this path, and then there's something like a house. Because what I've thought about is, let's have it so you start here on this little patch of ground, and then when you enter the building, the music changes. That's kind of the idea. So we'll start with the basics. If I just started this test game now, there's no music by default. You know, we don't really want to give you a lot of stuff piled in that you have to then delete. So we've started with a blank map, we've done a little bit of a path, and we've actually got a building, like so. Now, I said that you don't start with any music. I lie, because I've actually been playing around with the music commands yesterday. By default, your version on Steam wouldn't do what it just did. It would do... Actually, that's the correct thing, comment it out. See, I modified this. I'm going to show you where this is in a little while, but when you run your test game on Steam right now, you run it, and it's silence. But it should be silence. That's blank, that's blank, that's blank, that's blank, and that's 0. And we save it, and it's inside the correct thing. Okay, so we run it, and it shouldn't play a sound. And if it does, perfect, excellent. So it's just a sound effect of our footfall, but no music playing in the background, like so, and that's what you would get by default. Now, the files you'll need for dynamic music, there's only one of them really. If we go to Script Bank, which you'll find here, Script Bank, and if you scroll down to the M's, you'll see there's something called music.lua, and then these are recent additions, I think in the last couple of updates. Music Play Track 1, Music Play Track 2, 3 and 4. I've added this one just as a work thing. So those are the dynamic music scripts. Music.lua is automatically loaded and running when your engine starts. But if you look inside the default version, this is the file by the way, you'll notice that by default no music has been specified in any of these string variables, and the music track default is 0, so it's not going to try and play any music. And so obviously by default you're not going to hear anything. But if you actually wanted some music in your game, rather than, you know the old trick, you get a sound zone, you cover the play start marker, you then go to properties, script, and then you do sort of like music in zone, and then you change the sound file to some atmospheric music. Apply changes, and then when you play it you'll actually get this sound. See, that's wind sound, and that's how we've normally done it. But as I said, there's some limitations to using sounds like that. So alternatively, instead of that approach, you could do this. Go into music.lua and insert, I've actually populated one already, insert a file name. Could be a WAV or an OGG file, it's up to you. Starting at the audio bank path and then going through the nest until you get to the file. So you've specified the relative path and file name to the track that you want to play, and that's track 1. And second thing you do is you say music track default, set that to 1, which means it's going to play, it's going to load and play that. If we just click save, always make sure you save in your Lua, and then all we're going to do is run. See, we've got no sound zone, but now when I play the game and shut up, can you hear it? That's our track. And that will play all the while we're playing the game, like so. But let's say you wanted to go into the building, and then the sound changes. You switch to another sound, and you want it to fade in. You don't want it to just instantly blurt out. You want it to fade in. So a quick way of doing it, without doing any complicated scripting, you just take yourself a trigger zone, and then you edit the properties, change the script. By default it's player in zone, but there's another kind of special player in zone which not only detects that you've actually entered this area, but it also triggers a track, and we want to trigger track 2. So we pick music play track 2 and set that. Forget this, you don't really need that at all. That's redundant. You'd only need that if you're doing some sort of sound stuff inside your script. Apply changes, and just for convenience we'll just keep the sort of the entity handle outside so we can easily edit it. So you can see that kind of covers the floor space of the building, so as soon as you walk inside that's going to trigger. But you'll remember we haven't actually told you what music track 2 is, so we'll comment that one in. That's a jungle wind music audio track. We could change that to something a bit more brutal, but I wanted something that could loop nicely. So if I save that and now run, what happens is by default it will play track 1, and then as soon as you walk into this zone it's going to play track 2. Listen to this. See what it did? It transitioned into this jungly atmospheric sound. If I now leave the building, it stays jungly. So that's the logic, you see. You need now something to say when you've left. Now there's two ways of doing that. Some people might do another trigger zone out here, which basically would say, you know, music play track 1. So as soon as you leave, it's music play track 1. There's another way, and this is the one I'm going to show you because it's sort of the cleverer one. It's the one I would do. What you're going to do is, instead of just using a script that I've provided, create your own. So music play track 2 custom. So you're going to create your own copy of this, and I've called it _custom. So I'm assigning that now to my trigger zone. I'm going to go to my new script. Now remember, when you copy and paste and you create a file and give it a different file name, always remember to update the function names as well. It has to mimic the file name exactly, otherwise it won't work. And there's lots of crazy stuff going on here, and this actually will be part of the next build because it's quite useful to have this working, and then you can just use the bits that you want, comment the rest out, which is what I'm doing now. Actually, I'll leave that one in, actually, the one at the bottom, because what I want to show you is, you see this condition? If you're in the zone, do this stuff, and if you put an else here, then you can reasonably assume that when you're not in the zone, you can do something else. Now you notice up here I've got myself a nice little variable. Again, good coding practice. Make sure the full name of the file name is in the function name, and also in your global variables. That way you won't have any global variable conflicts if you've got lots of scripts in a very complicated game. So by default we're setting it to 1. So what we can say is, if you entered the house, so you've entered the zone, and this value is 1, then do something. Now you see all these commands, these are all our dynamic music commands. That just basically plays a track, but this would allow you to play a track for a certain amount of time, and also fade in over an amount of time as well. You can keep changing the volume if you want. And you've got that one, which will cue a second piece of music after the end of the first one. So it won't loop the first one, it will play it once through, and then it will cue the second one immediately after it. So it's very good for synchronizing music, as I explained earlier. But the one we're interested in is sort of a variation of what we found in this script, which is music play. So it's 2,1000. So go back here and paste that in. It'll do what we've kind of seen before. It will trigger music 2 to play, and this 1000 means it's going to transition to that over the course of 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. Let's speed that up a little bit. Let's say 250 milliseconds, which is 1/4 of a second. And another thing that we must do, otherwise it will... It's quite clever, the dynamic music commands. Right now this script will call this all the time. It will go bang, 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 bang. And you'd think it would kind of replay the music from the beginning, and it would just have this stuttering noise. It won't do that. It's clever enough to know that if it's already playing track 2 and the fade transition has happened, it's just going to assume that's what you wanted. If you did want it to go stutter, 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 or restart the music, you have to do music stop and then music play again. So that's how you would control that. So what we want to do is change our variable, because ideally you only want to call it once. It's just good coding practice. So now you've detected that the variable is 1, then you change it to 2, and then you trigger track 2 to play. Now when you leave the zone, so you notice if entity player in zone is 1, that will be false if you've left the zone, i.e. you've left the house. So then this code's going to kick in. And we only want one thing to happen. We only want it to change the track back to 1 once. Because remember, mostly you'll be outside of this house. You'll be halfway across the map, and this script might still be running if you've got always active on. So we check for the value of 2, which is what we set it to once we started track 2 playing. And then we're going to set that variable back to 1. So rinse and repeat. Obviously when the next time you're in the building, it's the right value to kick in. And we want to play that music, but just to show off, let's say it takes 4 seconds to transition back into the outside one. Now let's say 3 seconds, I don't want to wait too long. And then we'll save that. Remember, we applied that script there, so it should just be a case of running it. So we've got our track 1 playing now. It's a bit quiet. I might be able to turn up the volume a bit. There you go. And we know the script's running because you look at a little prompt at the bottom that I left in. Nice little bit of debugging information for you. Now we're going to enter the house on a quick transition. Great, so that was a 1/4 of a second transition. And notice the variable is now 2, so it knows that we're inside the building because that player in zone was 1 and it set this variable to 2. Now remember the condition, as soon as we leave this, we're going to leave in the zone condition will be false, it will do the else and the code underneath that, which when this variable is 2, it will set it back to 1 and then transition back to track 1 over 3 seconds. So let's see if that works. And voila. So that, in a nutshell, is the essential qualities of dynamic music. The idea that you don't really have to write all your own variables to fade, transition, volumes and stuff. It's all built in. All you've really got to do is decide what music you want playing where, which is kind of pretty cool. So there's another thing you can try. Now that's the stuff that I wanted to show off. It's that simple. So just make sure that you cut and paste the scripts, you rename the prop player, that they use the commands that are available, are demonstrated in this little custom that I'll actually include for you in the next build. If you want a full list of these commands, just go to music.lua and starting, say, here. So you can music play, you can play it instantly, you can cue the music at the end, you've got descriptions above what they actually do. You can play it for a certain amount of time. You can actually cue it at the end of a track and then only a certain amount of time. So you've got all of these combinations. You can stop the music, you can set the music's volume. You can set the default, what the default's going to be. So when you start level 2, you actually can set a default in the script and it'll remember it. And then you actually set fade time if you want to change it sort of yourself. But you'll notice fade time is kind of a part of all these other things, that fade time is a parameter. So you don't probably never need to call that. But you can do. It does something. But it's usually a subset of everything else, so kind of you don't need to. In fact, I've just realised if I leave that in, that's a bit of a bug. So when we go to a build, you don't really want a prompt popping up all the time. So that's where you're going to find all your music commands. I'll explain these a little bit, what it means. Music underscore track 1, that's the file name of the music. I think we know this. Music track interval is where you want it to start. So it's actually the starting point within that sound file, within that music file. Track length is the number of bytes that represents the size of the music file. It's a bit of a brain ache actually. I'm not really happy that you're having to specify this, and in fact you probably don't. I'd be very surprised if these actually do anything remarkable. But just in case they don't, how you would actually find out this value is relatively simple. You would go to Audio Bank, where you're storing your stuff. You'd right click on your sound file, you go to Details, and actually it probably is a little bit more complicated because you've got to find out the WAV header format, and sometimes I always thought it actually displayed it here, but it actually doesn't. But at least you get the length, so you can actually work out the number of bytes based on whether you've got an 8 or a 16-bit WAV file, and the time, which is in seconds divided by whatever the resolution is, and then you can work it out. But my guess is you probably don't need to add those values. You just add the music that you want and it'll just figure it all out for you. They might just be left in for some other reason. But those are guides. So Asylum Atmos is this, and then Jungle Wind is that, and then Wind and Near Sea is this, and then this one we have Desert, which is, it's not, I don't think it's 5,000. I think that's a little experiment I had. Little teeny weeny music incident tracks that you could just fire off for a little second. And speaking of that, I think I'll show you that one now, the music playtime, which is pretty cool. Remember when we walked in the door and we got this, and we would always play that music when you're in the building. What if you just wanted to play something quickly, like da-da, and then it goes back to your regular programmed schedule? Well, for that, let's get rid of some of this code and let's have a look at this possibility, shall we? So you've entered the zone, the variable is 1, you want to set it to 2, when you leave, set that variable back to 1. So it only happens when you enter the building for the first time. We don't need that, we want something similar, which is this. Now I like cutting and pasting to make sure I get no typos sneaking in. So what that's going to do is going to play track 2, but only for 3 seconds, and it's going to fade it in over 1.5 seconds, which kind of defeats the object because you're only playing it for 3. So if I put a 1, that's 1 millisecond. That's practically instantaneous. It's going to have no transition time between the old music and this new one. But it'll play it for 3 seconds, and then watch what happens. So if I save that and run the game, okay, so is everyone listening? See what happened? See what I did there? So what actually happened was it played it for 3 seconds, then went straight back to the last remembered music track. It remembers what it was playing before, you see. That's pretty cool. Now you might want it to fade back to... So I'm playing it for 3 seconds, then it instantly goes back to the other one. I think there might be... This is where I go into the realm of this broadcast is not rehearsed, unscripted, you're seeing it as I'm seeing it. But I'm going to assume there's some logic in terms of setting the fade transition. So we've got play music time, and then fade time was it fading in to this music. Now we want to be able to change it so when it fades out of this music. So what I'm going to try and do is use this fade time in my script. So bump bump bump, triggered it, and then maybe once you've done that, then set it. This probably won't work, by the way, but I just want to see what happens. So we got our music for 3 seconds. Yeah. So I think once you've issued it, you probably have to do something else. So there will be a way to actually have that music transition back into the other one gracefully. But for the moment, I can't really put my finger on it. But there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff that I'm probably not going to show you, like queuing multiple tracks at the end of each other, and the inner guts of it. But you could probably figure out by trial and error, which is what I do if I had more time and I wasn't under the clock on this broadcast. Now, as you may know, this is Twitter, so it's a live broadcast, and it affords anyone who's listening right now the opportunity to ask some questions. The reason I bring this up is that I see question marks on the chat feed. You can't see it on the video, but I can see it on another screen. And it says, how many songs can we do with this? The news is as many as you want, or at least as much memory as your computer has. You see, even though we've put music track 1, 2, 3, 4, those are just Lua constants. Those are just variables. You know, we could delete all this and actually just put this raw data straight into these parameters. But we wanted to put them up here just to give you an idea of a little bit of organisation. But you notice you've got load music 1, 2, 3, 4. You can just keep going. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, for example, let's say you wanted a 5th track. Just put 5. But instead of this constant, you'd actually put a string starting with audio bank. Remember, you got to do double slash because 1 slash and then a letter is actually a special string code. You don't really want that. You actually want the slash. So audio bank. Now let's have a bit of fun. Audio bank. Let's find something that really isn't a music, but we could play it and have a laugh. Let's say, what's characters? No, cartoon. Ping gem in front of you. What would that one sound like? Interesting. Lots of things. Something that we'll recognise. Something that lasts a bit longer as well. Here we go. A moan. Okay, let's do that one, which is in zombies. So we go back to our script. Put zombies is the folder, and there's the file. So we're going to pretend that and it's not a looping sound file. That's what you really want for your music. This is actually not looping, so it's going to be a bit odd. So it's a moan on a loop, an interval of 0, Well, let's not test my theory that these don't do anything, but I'll put 5 there. That's 5 seconds. So if that file is longer than 5 seconds, which we could find out if we wanted to, then it will actually cut it off at that if this parameter does anything. So that's music 5. So what I can do now is save that, go to here. Instead of triggering 2, I'll trigger 5. And that'll play for 3 seconds. Let's play for 5 seconds. And it'll play instantly. And then when you leave, it can reset the flag and you can do it again. So let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. Yes, this is the beauty of live demonstrations. Absolutely nothing happened. Alright, let's make the assumption someone's put a cap and you can only have 4. Which I don't believe, but we're going to find out right now. So there you go. Save that one. And that one. I wonder if we saved it. Anyway, let's try this again. So now we're actually going to put into music slot 4. Right. So in answer to the question, how many songs can we do with this? 4. However, I see no reason why we can't increase that number to a rather large number. I just need a few people from the community requesting it, and then I will add it down as a task. It's not for me adding lots of extra things when there's already stuff on a list that's already been requested by the community, because those are the things I'm putting priority to. Those are the things I'm going to implement first. But you could see right there that simply by not using 5 and using 4, that one worked. So I'm just going to see if it does it twice, because remember, when you reset the flag, it should be able to cue you another moan, as it were. So if I go in, that was about 2 seconds worth. So if we leave, and then try again. Yeah, cool. Alright, so what I'm going to do, just to play around with this, make it a bit better, I want a transition of, say, 3/4 of a second. Doesn't need to be 5 seconds after all, it needs to be about 2.5, maybe, yeah, 2.5. And if we just save that, go back here, I think we'll set that to 0. I just want to see whether the interval and length actually affect how it loads in this WAV file. I suspect not. We'll see. So we've got our music. We'll try and trigger it now. Ah, yes, it does. You see. See what it played? It played a sound with like 1 byte in it. So the length is very, very relevant. So if we put 3 seconds, I think what it's going to do is reserve a buffer of 3 seconds worth of. I say 3 seconds. I mean, I'm assuming that's milliseconds. Or it could be bytes. 38 milliseconds, 38 seconds for a music track. It could be. It could be. Let's prove this once and for all whilst we're here. We'll go to the zombie. That was the one we used. Go to properties, details, length 1 second. Okay, it's pretty forthcoming. We'll set it to 1,000 milliseconds. See what that does. In theory, it will actually be a buffer big enough to hold the sound, and then it shouldn't cut it off at the end. That's kind of cool. So yeah, maybe when it said 1, it was rounding it down, so I'm going to increase the buffer to 2 seconds. And then we should get to the end of the moon. Yes. So now we've got a nice buffer. So yeah, length definitely important, and it sounds like milliseconds to me. So that number means milliseconds. Wouldn't it be great if this was documented? It probably is somewhere. I'm being cruel. It probably is documented somewhere, but there's a lot of documentation for something this size. And my brain's pretty cheesy these days, so it's probably forgot this extra information to make room for some new stuff. So I'm going to delete... No, I'm not. I should not delete stuff. This is actually one of our real scripts that you're going to need at some point. So that's for 2 seconds. We're going to go back to our custom script. Doesn't need to be that long, because remember that moan happened like 2 or 3 times in it, so it's a second and a half. I think it is actually. It's certainly less than 2 seconds, that sample. So we'll go for that. Yeah, that's good. It's like the second one's like an echo for the first one. So you leave, and then it should be able to trigger it again. And I also noticed something. I just realised earlier when I said how do we get it to fade out back into the original track, the fade value is both fade in and fade out for time-based track play. So this track is fading in at 3/4 of a second, then fading out at the same time as well. So that's how that works. Haha. Yes, indeed. In fact, this Twitch broadcast is my testimony. This is my documentation for the dynamic music system. There you go. And of course, anyone that's new to Game Guru may find it not very spooky at all in the middle of daylight. I'm going to show you a few things to make it spookier, bring the fog in, make it dark, like so, and we're going to have some better graphics, more shadows, reduce the ambience, maybe change the sunlight so it's casting more blue. Is that as far as we can go? No. We can increase the fog intensity and reduce that blueness a little bit more. Yes, we've got a flashlight so you can see around, but we'll keep it spooky. So there you go. So when you walk in, yes, especially if it was a really dark room. And you can also do, just want to show off, switch it to its dynamic. You can change the size with plus and minus. Put a little light in here. And that should do a little bit of light. See, you got a little light inside the room. Go in. Now you notice the light is actually on the floor. If you're zoomed in, that's, you know, I'll lock the building so I can edit the light, move the light up, and that should be a bit better. Ba-da-ba-da. So now the light is actually more in the middle of the room. Strange sort of yellow, but you know, we can do something about that. Go to properties, change the colour to something like orange. Just a subtle orange. Yeah. Apply that. Try it again. I always find orange is much better than yellow. I don't think yellow really exists in nature. In terms of a pure yellow, it's always mixed with some other, a red and a blue. So there, that's a little bit better. Of course, you would need something to make that sound. So again, I'm kind of going off tangent. I mean, you would actually use a sound trigger to have this incidental thing. But just imagine you get your hands on a music studio and you can actually create some jingles and things. You could actually do this sort of thing just to create that tension. You know, those little incident tracks. So I'm not going to use that guy because he might start attacking me. I don't really want that. Let's have a wall guy. So I'll just pop him stuck into the wall a little bit. So the idea is it's sort of not an actual zombie, it's just you telling the story using sounds. So you hear that, and as you're looking around you see how ghastly this place is. So there you go. I have digressed a little just to show a little bit of Game Guru, but you get the idea. You can now add music by default. You can change the music based on entering a zone. Remember, all this is Lua scriptable. You don't have to use zone. You can actually trigger music when an enemy sees you or when you pick something up. I'm just looking at the clock. Actually, we've got a little bit of time. I keep saying I only want to do half an hour Twitches, but that never ends well, and usually ends up we land on the hour. So I do want to demonstrate it because I probably have to do it again if I don't. So player in zone is one way to trigger this music. Now let's leave that alone, and I'm going to add some more stuff to my cool level. Well, my horribly small level, but you get the idea. Also, another little trick: if you press tab when you're in the editor view, chops off the top of the roof, so you can edit your building, you know, from up on high. What I'm going to add is something I can collect. So I'm going to put a table in. Give me a table. There you go, a trolley. Put a trolley there. And then I'm going to have something I can collect. So go to collectibles. Ooh, yes, the mysterious milk carton of woe. Like so. So the idea is that when you collect the milk carton, something exciting just happened in the game and you want to trigger a bit of dynamic music because of that. But if you look at what we've got right now, it's health.lower. And you don't really want to be changing the default scripts too much, because you may load in somebody else's game that relies on these default scripts, and if you've hacked into them and changed them, those games won't behave like they're supposed to, and you'll think there's something wrong with their game. It's not, it's because you've messed up your scripts. As a rule of thumb, don't mind if you're actually using the script bank itself. You know, you can be as messy as you like in Game Guru, but you should definitely cut and paste so you get your own copy of a script, and ideally you want to put it in your own folder. That's certainly what third-party artists do. If you look up here, like Daggard and D-Vader and Rolfe, they have their own folder. They're store artists, these are their artist tag names, and they have their own folder in the script bank. That means any scripts they do now and in the future are completely protected. No one can overwrite them, no one can go in and mess about with them. Well, they can do, but sort of the rule is, you know, don't do that, because otherwise things will stop working. Remember, when you actually cut and paste and you create your own copy of a file, copy the file name exactly, go into the script and change the function names, otherwise it won't work. Can't stress that enough. Now you're in here, you've collected it, you're still alive, collected the health. Oh, that's a bit of fun. Collected super game-changing health of coolness, just to show it's different from regular health. And before I do anything else, I'll just save that, go into my Guru, change health to health custom. That's our own. Apply changes, very important. Save the game, also very important. And then we're going to run. In fact, I'm lazy. I'm going to move my start marker closer to the door. Hey, lazy is he? Okay, so now when we go to collect our egg carton, our milk carton, yes. Now the reason you didn't see that lovely message that is supposed to have popped up, because our debug music player track 2 custom var is overriding it. With the command prompt, you can only have one prompt on the screen. And fear not, there's more commands now. We've got commands to put sprites on the screen, text on the screen, but prompt is a nice quick way just to print some text or some values onto the game very quickly. So we've got rid of that now, so we're allowed to do things like this. So now when we run it, we shouldn't get that debug at the bottom of the screen. Obviously that's just when you start. So it all fades away, done. And now we should see a prompt when we collect the milk carton. Collected super changing health of coolness. But what I wanted to demonstrate, the whole reason for this digression, is you can insert dynamic music commands here. Because music.lua is a global script that's already loaded at the start of the engine, it's done by default, it knows about all the music commands by default as well. So just like we did here, we can do the same when we collect the milk carton. So I'll cut and paste. And just to keep it real, we'll have a different music this time. So this will be track 3. We'll play it for 3 seconds. And our transition should be quite quick, so 1/4 of a second. Save. Go back to the music.lua, make sure track 3 is something, it isn't at the moment. So make sure it's got a string. This will be wind near sea. So you'll hear 3 seconds of sea wind, I think. So we'll find out. Just reading the chat as I'm narrating this session. When is the sci-fi DLC out? Is it free for pledgers? I don't think we said sci-fi DLC will be free for pledgers. I suppose if you've not used up your DLC quota, because we gave lots of DLCs out to all the people who were gold pledgers, and it was like gold. I think gold pledgers got 3 DLCs, silver pledgers got 2 DLCs, and bronze pledgers got 1 DLC. If you've not used that, you've not used that yet, then yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't use the sci-fi DLC as one of your free DLCs. But if you've already grabbed 3 DLCs, then I'm afraid you're going to have to either buy it when it gets released, which should be good because I think we'll put it on a discount when we release it for stamps. That's a great time to buy it. Or it may come round in the future that there's future discounts and you can get it that way. But we're planning to have it reasonably priced. It's going to be a lower DLC price than the others because we've listened to Steam users who are saying you can't have a DLC. That's more expensive than the core product. It's just not done. It's not cricket. I mean, irrespective of the fact that the actual core product's only, $20, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how much stuff is in the DLC. It can't be more expensive than the core product. I suppose if the core product was free, we couldn't charge anything for the DLCs. So yeah, it's going to be a lower price. It's going to be on discount when it launches. And I think you'll like it. There's some really cool stuff in there. And like I said, if you've not used up your free DLCs that you got as being a gold pledger, then yeah, I don't have any problems with adding the sci-fi DLC as one of the options for you. And no, you can't swap DLCs. Just to anticipate that question. Okay, what was we doing? Okay, we're going to go in the door. And now when we pick it up, we're going to get a different dynamic thing. That's actually pretty good, actually. So there you go. That's another way to actually trigger dynamic music by actually sticking it into a script for collecting stuff. So you've entered zones. You can collect something and trigger a change of music. Another one, just to badger the point, if you've been playing around in the script bank, you've probably found this one, aisoldier.lua. Again, we'll cut and paste. We'll create a custom. And it's not a special word you have to keep using, custom. It's just what I want to call the file name, just so I've got a bit of consistency. I know, oh, that's something I slightly changed. That's all it's for. Again, you've got to make sure that the file name is perfectly represented in the function names. In this one, this is an AI script. It's pretty meaty. You see it's here as well. You've got all sorts of places where it occurs. Here as well. Aggro is when one enemy sees you, tells all his mates, and so they can do something about it as well. That's what that's for. But I also know that some of those aggros are called within here, so what I need to do is search for all instances of AI Soldier. Anything that's a function call, that is, and then change it to the new the file name designate. Here we go. You see, those are functions that we've just changed the function name, so we need to change the function calls. So that should work. Carry on. Any functions? Any more functions? Yeah, there's another function. You kind of, if you kind of see this code, have a bit of a study of it, you'll notice what this aggro thing does. It's pretty cool. But that's the bit we're going to use to demonstrate how you can use dynamic music. Is that it? Are we going round now? Are we repeating ourselves? Let's just start there again. I don't want to miss one. I'll be thinking something's wrong. I just missed one of these. Ah. Oh no, that's right. Yeah, custom exit. Yeah, like I said, the character and some other scripts have an exit. That gets called when the entity is destroyed. Okay, cool. So it's all AI Soldier custom. We're going to save that. Very important. We're going to get a character and assign it that script. So we'll hide the character behind the building so he doesn't see us straight away. Pop him here. and then change your script from AI soldier to AI soldier custom. Apply that. I'm thinking it's going to get really annoying if we can't defend ourselves, so I'm just going to give myself a weapon. Maybe the... what should we give ourselves? The Colt 1911 will be fine. Extra health. And then save. Always save. Save early, save often. And this is just to test that the combat system still works. So we've transitioned that and then that in quick succession, and it still worked. So that's pretty cool. So if we go around the other side. So we know that the combat guy's doing his thing, and headshots. Do headshots work? Oh yeah, and he can take his weapon, which I think is also called 1911. So what I wanted to demonstrate, now that we've successfully duplicated that functionality, just like we did with the milk curtain of triggering music as we need it, you can do the same here. So if you go through the script, you don't really need to be a super scripter, but what you can do is look for strings that look relevant to what you want. For example, there's a string here called alerted, so the enemy has been alerted. So who sets that? There's one which actually starts the combat. I think what we want is to trigger it when the enemy sees you. Obviously ideally for the first time, but what we're looking for then is alerted. So if we go to the top again, and just look for the string alerted. There it is. So let's look at this. If you're returning home and you're within 200 units of your start position, then you're going to set the state to alerted. Surely not. This is a bit better. If the player is within the view range that's been specified in the entity properties divided by 3, I heard something, then he's alerted. Now that's a great place to put. So you can imagine very peacefully walking along a street, and then an enemy sees you, and in addition to having his sound effect where he goes arg, it changes to combat music, and then it gets crazy, and you'll see that in nearly all first-person shooters and modern games. So we're going to do it here, but with our beach music. So it's not going to be particularly exciting music, but I don't think we have a lot of music in the... In fact, I know we don't have a lot of music in the stock media. Not many people have requested it. It's something that we can do. We've been doing software for over a decade, and we know how to get voiceovers, music tracks, sound effects. We just need people to say, how many you want, of what variety, of what styles, how long do you want them, how many do you want. Just bear in mind that as we're doing that, we're not doing other things. Small team. So there you go. So we're going to trigger this track 3 when this enemy sees us. So I don't know whether you heard that because he spent all his time shooting. So let me just check what I actually asked it to do. Yeah, playing for 3 seconds and transition of 250, all the while it's actually being alerted. So, you know what, I'm looking at the time. I probably don't have time to go and make or find a really high impact, super exciting music track and drop it in. But I think you get the idea. With a good set of music, triggered through going in zones, picking things up, alerting enemies, you can really create an audioscape for your game. And what I find is audio creates emotion. It creates a feeling within your game, and there's just nothing quite like it when you get it right. So these are the commands that you can use in Lua right now in order to create that sense of immersion. Just casting an eye over at the chat. Looks like we've got about 10 minutes of this broadcast left, so I think we've done well, and hopefully that was a comprehensive little glance at the dynamic music system that's built into Game Guru that you can use right now. Got VRG 2015 asking, is it possible to change the weapons for CC characters to medieval weapons like bow or sword? Not at the moment, because all the weapons are firing weapons. There's not really animations in place for the characters for them to do awful lot of melee. I have been working on some now. The fantasy DLC has some new characters coming, like the knight and the skeleton and the elven archer and the barbarian, and they have melee animations with really nice weapons. And so I'll be doing the animation, scripting, doing the melee, and that's when you'll go into the character creator and be able to select melee weapons. But it currently doesn't make sense to give a combat soldier a mace, because they have no animations. They wouldn't know what to do with the mace. They'd probably try and fire it. So that's the reason why you can't select melee weapons on the character creator, because the character creator is currently based just on the combat soldier sort of Uber model. But there's melee characters on the way, and they'll actually be in the character creator. So that will come through the DLC. But a little bit of good news, I'm actually going to put some little bits of each DLC into Game Guru. So that's a little sneak peek of what's coming in 2016, just to keep everyone with a smile on their face. Next question. Oh yeah, just to insert, Synchromesh says you can actually go into the FPE after you've created a character with Character Creator and then actually artificially put in a melee weapon. But your mileage varies when you do that. And of course, if you're doing your own models and your own animations, then absolutely by all means you can do that right now. Right now. But yeah, for the drag and drop, for the clicking and stuff, without a lot of scripting and understanding and modelling and stuff, we'll be doing that for you in the very, very near future. Just need to get a few more bits of assets exported, and then I can release the new updates to the Fantasy DLC and also the Sci-Fi DLC as well. VRG 2015 says, I think the animations for characters created by CC cannot animate your weapons. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, that's confirmed. Pirate Mark adds, would have to be tested. The bipeds are different, might be facing the wrong way, but it should. No, they're facing the right way. That's fine. It's just they don't have that animation to sort of, do a haymaker on a sword, or try and land a blow, a glancing blow with a mace, or a halberd, something like that, or a fish. There's a question. I think there's one more at the bottom. Let me just scroll across for you. Is it? Oh no, I think we're alright here. Is it possible to load original characters in CC in the future? Well, yes, really. In fact, when I'm doing the DLCs, all I'm really doing is dropping in body parts into a series of folders, and then I can go into the character creator, those body parts instantly appear, and then I can start building new characters from them. That's kind of all I'm doing. There's no reason why an artist just can't create their own versions of heads and bodies, and textures and hats and beards or other facial attachments like glasses and false noses, and just go to town, just creating all these assets and stuff, and then just making combinations of them in Character Creator. You can absolutely do that now. But there's not really a lot of documentation on it. I think what I'll probably do is get these DLC Character Creator editions out, so you've actually got more stuff to do in Character Creator, and then as I'm reeling from all that work, I can do a bit of documentation for the benefit of third-party artists to say, I've just done that, this is how you can do the same. And that way, in the future, you should see a lot more stuff appearing in the Character Creator, because it will be the third parties that are producing it rather than us overworked selves. So hopefully that answers that question. Got less than 5 minutes left. If you've got any more questions, please post them on the chat and I'll be able to answer them, or I'll try to answer them as best I can. And whilst I'm waiting for that, I'm going to undo any dangerous things. That's fine, we can leave that. Can we leave this? Well, it's in a bit of a mess, isn't it? I wonder if I can undo it all. Just do Control Z until it stops. Yeah, great. So I've fixed all that. You'll find that when you go into this on your version of Steam, it looks like this. I've commented out these hard-coded tracks, and that's 0. And remember, that is that, and that is that. And that should be as it should be. Yeah, great. So that will go out and ship with the next build for your delectation. And Yeah, and in the future, I'm not too super happy with having to hard code the file names inside the script, because isn't it a pity that you couldn't specify the music here? Or even better, have a little thing where you can play the music, you know, try different OGs and WAV files. Oh, that sounds good. And then just say, I want this for my music, I want this, the music when you go into this zone, instead of having to go into Lua script. But the reason we've decided to do the scripting first is it gives power to the community instantly. You're not waiting around. You can then take all these commands and do a billion combinations with them. That's why we're actually gone for the Lua commands first, and then we'll wrap those in nice friendly UIs. And in 2016 what we're going to do is, rather than have lots of more hard-coded UI that you'll want constant updates for, what we're actually going to do is something like, as an example, you can get a trigger zone, no, even better, get rid of that, get a sound zone, drop it in, and go into properties. Normally you would actually specify a script here, which is fine, but you'll have another button underneath which is like, you could think of it like bring up the UI, but the UI has been defined within the script. So when you click that button, you'll get something like a widget with buttons, sliders, color pickers, all those kinds of things. And that's defined in Lua script. So what it means is, the bottom line is, you can actually have a lot of controls exposed at this level, and you wouldn't need to go into this level. So all these values would now be available from a kind of a widget menu that's been described and defined by the person who created the script. And that could be as simple as just picking the behaviors of a character. Let's say you dropped in this guy and you clicked on him, you clicked on his properties, and then you clicked on some sort of script button here. It would pop up with a menu. It might say aggressive, defensive, coward, sniper, grenade maniac, different behaviors that you would just pick and say, I want that kind of behavior. And then as soon as you run the game, it would do that behavior. But the actual UI itself is actually defined by the person who wrote the script. And that UI can be as little or as grandiose as possible. You could even have a UI that's the size of the screen, defining incredible amounts of metadata for the behavior of that particular script. So that's what we're going to do next, and we're going to keep it open source in the sense that all them Lua scripts are just notepad files. You know, they're all text files. You just open them up and change them. It's up to you what the UI looks like eventually. So less than 30 seconds left, I suppose. And I'm afraid we're out of time. So if there were any more questions, I'm afraid I just dropped off the end of the cliff. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was useful to learn about dynamic music. We'll be back next week. I think it will be Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it'll be Wednesday. And it will be on another subject of your choosing. So go to the forums, have a chat amongst yourselves, decide what you want to have me talk about next, and then that's what I'll talk about. So until next time, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you next week. Bye.